to begin?
Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so I will call the meeting to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alicia, will you please do roll call?
Yep. Steve Degolo.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Lori Belargent.
Here.
Lacey Oster. Here. Bruce Belargent.
Here.
Danny Erickson. Here. Matt Kukal.
Here.
Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Is there a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Steve, second. Any discussion?
Yeah, can I just make one comment on the agenda? So I know we had talked 2 weeks ago about having a team development on here. I know it got removed last minute. So I just want to say that from my perspective, I think development of our board is important. I'd like to see it continue in the future. The previous board valued it, voted on it, wanted it on the agenda. It's not here tonight, and I'm disappointed in that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I did not receive any public comment. Shannon, did you receive anything for public?
Nope.
Okay. Then moving on, we will go to our biannual school resource officer report. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. See you out. Take one pressure down.
I made copies
We had it
already.
already.
We had passed it out. Yeah.
Same thing you-
Sorry, yeah.
Well, all right. Well, see that you have my report in front of you. We're reporting on from August 29th to May 5th. So from August 29th to May 5th, there were a total of 154 school days. During those 154 days, 392.5 hours were worked at the district, above the contracted total of 280 hours. During that time, 120 requests for service at the school, Somerset School District, during school hours. School requests for service include meetings, planned classroom visits, investigations of crimes and ordinance violations, extracurricular events, and directed school traffic patrols. Requests for service handled by other Somerset police officers when I was not available are included in the count. It's been a great year at Somerset School. We look forward to continuing our work with the district. We continue to strive for the goal of being highly visible and approachable for students and staff, and I believe we are meeting that goal. That's my report. Are there any questions on my report?
Questions?
I'd like to just say thank you for you guys' commitment to the district. I come from a career in law enforcement as well, so law enforcement and presence on campus is extremely important to me. I know we had some struggles, and you guys, I feel like you really stepped up and met the need. I have a child in the elementary school, and there's not a whole lot of days that there's not a police car there at drop-off. So I appreciate that. I know it's kind of outside of this, but your presence here has been noticed, and as a parent, as a resident, I appreciate it. So thank you for what you've done to work with us during this troubling time.
Well, thank you.
Great. And you're staying around for a little bit, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Is there a different agenda item that we're going to talk more about this, or is this actually?
Yeah, there is.
So we'll go ahead and we'll go straight on to that, because our next area is the school security, looking at 24-25. This was requested to be put on the agenda, so I guess at this time we can discuss the discussion that we'd like to discuss.
I'd like to speak to it. Our district parents entrust their children to our schools. It should be our #1 priority to ensure their safety. Although we can all appreciate security and structural improvements made a few years back, the human presence of a full-time SRO cannot be understated. I spoke to a representative of NASRO, which is National Association of School Resource Officers, Todd Runyon. He's a district president. And as for the idea of shift officers stopping by when they have time being essentially the same as having a full-time SRO on campus is not accurate. This current year we're at a reduced schedule, quite reduced, but full-time does make a huge difference. These officers will not have the same ability to foster the relationships that are fundamental. They will not have the same amount of trust from the students, especially the middle and high school students, which can lead to valuable information being shared. We may be a small school district, but we are not immune to the growing threats of school violence. Examples, Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, just last week. Uvalde, Texas, we all know about that. These are smaller districts, rural settings. So any arguments that, well, we're in a rural area and everything is fine, I don't think that applies. That's just my opinion. Unfortunately, schools are targets. It's not easy to talk about that, but it is a critical, important subject. And it's a hard thing to talk about, but it's the right thing to do. We need to do all we can. This is a top priority. It should not be dismissed for budget reasons. Can anyone on this elected body think of anything more important than the safety of their children, our district's children, and staff? I believe, and I can be corrected on this, but I think it was $48,000 for the year 2022 through 2023 for a full-time SRO as far as the budget that was spent. And to me, that's a bargain. A good SRO should be actively working to foster relationships within the building on a daily basis, and the students, their families, and the staff at the school deserve this, and they need a trusted individual in law enforcement that they can speak to. Last week, 2 of our students trusted an officer to report a firearm posted on social media. It may have been nothing, but it was investigated. So it is important to have that relationship. These relationships are built and have the great potential of leading to all sorts of positive results. These relationships have led to students being pulled from abusive homes, having been removed students from victims of sex trafficking, have kept students with suicidal thoughts to reach out for help before attempting suicide, and have led students to reach out to their SRO when they get information about possible threats. The goal of NASRO and SRO programs is to provide safe learning environments. NASRO recommends 1 SRO per building or per 1,000 students. We have over 1,400 students in the district, so 1 isn't even where we need to be. We should really be looking at 2. Both mental health professionals and school resource officers have a vital and important role to play in keeping schools safe. Amid the movement for social justice, school resource officers have become a soft target for anti-law enforcement sentiment. However, this issue is often oversimplified and over-politicized because we all have the same goal: to create a safe learning environment for all students. SROs prevent violence in schools. In an analysis under the direction of the U.S. Secret Service, it is reported that there were 67 averted school attack plots. Nearly 1/3 of the cases featured SROs playing a role in either reporting the attack or responding to a report made by someone else, highlighting their role as trusted adult when and within the community of the school. SROs play an important role in school violence prevention. In the 8 cases it was reported by the Secret Service under their investigation that an SRO received the initial report of an attack or a plot from students or others, highlighting their role as a trusted adult. There are some examples. These are all since February. April 4th, 2024, a school resource officer prevented a possible shooting by recognizing trouble signs of emotional distress. March 21st, 2024, a school resource officer's knowledge of the school's operations helped him discover a loaded gun on a student. March 7th, 2024, a school resource officer's familiarity with school staff members facilitated quick confiscation of 2 loaded guns from a student. February 22nd, 2024, school resource officers confiscated a gun from a high school student shortly after another student poses with it on social media. So these are just some of the reasons. There's many more. I would like to make a motion that next week we have testimony from the NASRO, and I was hoping for a second on that.
Before we move on to, first of all, this isn't listed as an action item on the agenda. And before we have a lot more discussion, I'd like to just make clear, and Steve, I think you said this when you were reading your report, that those items that you listed at the end were nationwide, correct?
That's correct.
I just don't want anybody watching the meeting to get the impression that all of those things happened here
No,
in Somerset.
that is correct, right.
But some time ago, Sergeant Farrell recommended that our school security plan not be made public. And perhaps it would be appropriate for the board to have this discussion in closed session as per policy 0167.2 and Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 paren 1 paren D.
This is a very vital safety issue. It's critical to the district parents. And
I
the
agree
taxpayers.
totally. I
Right.
just think that this is something that we have in policy and in state law. And it's been recommended by our school resource officer that it not happen in public. That's all.
Okay, so you're saying the advocation of a full-time SRO is something we can't talk about here tonight?
I'm just saying that if we're gonna get into specifics about our school safety plan, which part of this is, I think it should be done in closed session.
I think there's a lot of questions that this community has, and they deserve to hear us talk about this.
And
I think
when,
that's important.
after we discuss it in closed session, then perhaps it would be appropriate to bring out of closed session any action.
Unfortunately, parents did not find out about being at a reduced level of security this year.
Until you made that public.
I didn't make that public. Other people noticed that, okay? So this is important. We need to talk about it.
Well, I'm making my suggestion.
So there was, how many contracted hours? Was it 280 and we came in at 392 total, so that's 102 hours above. That shows a need to me that it's busy here and we could probably use a full-time officer.
Do we have our hours from last year, by chance, what that was?
No, that's something that we were asked to provide here today. Unfortunately, the way it was logged last year during the full-time officer, we didn't divide it up by hours. So the answer to the question is no, we don't have those hours. However, I think John has some data pre-COVID that we could compare notes on. You can find that.
I'm just, because that was a big discussion with the board prior to this decision because of different trainings and different things that happened since the contract did. The hours by paying and doing it this way were not significantly different from having full-time, which is why we felt comfortable going forward with this.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, so previously, I mean, we work under a conditional bargaining agreement. When I say we, I mean the police officers who are part of that union. So we also had some life events going on with our young department, with FMLA, and other authorized leave. I mean, you're not wrong with your analysis that, maybe we weren't on campus as much as we could have been or should have been. But, so the trainings, the leave, the vacation, with one employee, we didn't have a really good discussion or the backfill situation. For example, we just don't have secondary SROs. And if that's something we want to explore in the future of, okay, this is our primary SRO, this is the person who will come in and fill those, whether it's overtime or what have you, we'll have to look at that. Another thing that we were challenged with was, post-2020 COVID, George Floyd, max exodus of law enforcement officers. At one point, we were down 50% of our staff. So we were reeling, but I feel like we're in a much better position now. We're back to full staff. I'm not trying to create excuses, but I'm just kind of trying to add a little bit of background to
Well,
that.
and when I said that, I wasn't trying to say you didn't do it the year before. I was just saying as far as the comparison when we said full-time versus half-time,
Sure.
the hours weren't all that different from what we were doing full-time.
I have some hours from the 19-20 school year and the 20-21 school year.
So I was able to find a report that I did that covered 117 school days, and I provided 615 hours to the school. And then that was 19 to 20, 20 to 21. The period of reporting was 124 school days and 439.75 hours were at the district. They used to track, when it was full-time, it was kind of easier to track when the officer was pulled away and here. But I was able to track like the non-school hours during the same period. So assigned to the school, but then hours spent investigating in the village or patrolling in the village. 2019 to 20, it was 190.75 for non-school hours. And then 2020 to 2021 was 132.25. So,
And we can put that on paper and get it to you guys. I was having a time keeping up.
right, yeah.
I'll just say, like, I value that completely. I think that safety and security is a top priority. It always has been for me. I think a full-time SRO on campus is 100% a top priority for me. When we had the discussion that we had last year in private closed session in regards to budget and some of the things that you guys were dealing with as far as staffing goes, I felt like it worked best for the arrangement that we came up with together. There was expectation that you guys would be here whenever you could. I think you met that. You helped us out immensely. I would love to get back to a full-time SRO. I would, and I look forward to that conversation. But I agree with Lori as well that I think that has to happen in closed session because it is the school safety plan. I would assume you would agree. I know that was the discussion that we had in the past, that stuff shouldn't be public. The plan as to what we do should be known, but the discussions should probably happen in closed session. And I would love for you guys to be part of that, to talk those numbers, because I think we should get to a resolution of a full-time SRO. However we make that happen. But I think it should be in closed session. I would agree with you, Lori.
So like arguably, like response times and weaknesses in our security plan, if there are, it's a work in progress. However, that kind of stuff should be disclosed in closed session. And then we can work towards mitigating risks and coming up with solutions. So those are just kind of two examples where I think closed session would be totally appropriate.
We could also explore grant opportunities. There's lots of those out there. Osceola School Board is looking at community-oriented police servicing. It's called COPS grants, and then St. Croix Falls also did that. So good success with that program.
I think Osceola just got approved, didn't they?
Not from this report on the Osceola
Okay,
side.
I thought I just saw something in the last couple of days to kind of.
Do you guys explore many grants or write them? Do you have the capacity to do it?
So we meet monthly. I meet monthly with Abby Mohada here, and we
But-
explore different grants.
That's something you would do jointly?
There's some that we
Whichever
can.
appropriate for school and whichever appropriate for
Okay.
police officers. Yep.
So the COPS grant that you just referenced is open until like early June.
June 2nd.
It's a lot to try to do that in addition to our other responsibilities. However, we are doing it. It just takes time. Just logging into these, you got to go through three different. I have to have my treasurers, the village treasurer log in under the SAM.gov, and you got to go into this other federal website, and it's just it's time consuming, but it's certainly something that I think would be a benefit. There is a match associated with that.
Can a lay person help with that, or somebody not?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure.
Just wondering if that was an option.
And the only problem with the grant as well comes the end of the grant, right? How do you take on another full-time officer, and then how do you support it? Like, there's a lot more to the grant than just writing the grant to get it.
Right.
So I believe the COPS program, which is under the Department of Justice, is a 3-year program? If I'm not mistaken.
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
And it's
Okay.
phased out over those 4 years.
So have we, maybe this is a question for the superintendent, have we done any grant writing in the past?
Yep, we have, and the problem is that many of the grants that we've looked at are designated for schools that have no SRO. So since we've had one in the past, we've been denied, or some that we've looked into and haven't even written because of the circumstances. So I agree. I know Abby and Chief Trepchek have been meeting. I know I forwarded grants. I know we're looking at I would say, kind of any possible possibility over the last year to try to make it back to full-time. I think that's ultimately the goal, for sure. But there's some give and take, and that's probably where the board has to have some discussion of, if that goes back to full-time, that pulls from something else, what is that thing? Not that that can't happen, but that's where that discussion needs to come.
Which that discussion then would also happen under closed session because of.
Well, potentially, because if that thing relates to
Exactly.
a person or a program or, something like that, yep,
Well, and in
that
the
would be my
past,
recommendation.
it was always practice, even when Abby would send out our security, our security plan, that would be linked, but not something that would be linked to the agenda for that reason, because you are then not saying there's things to hide, but you're also exposing some decisions and safety issues that aren't necessarily for all people to be aware of. And I think even within that discussion, it would be helpful maybe for you to be within that, Abby, so you could kind of share then some of those other things that are currently happening within our district, because I think that I commend our SRO, and I think that that's a great program. I'm with you, 100%. Obviously, I have 3 kids that go here. Like, school safety for our kids is absolutely a priority. But I think there's a lot of other things too that's supported by our SRO and things that our staff is highly trained in with ALICE training and different procedures that we have that I think is, maybe a good time for us to come back and just make us all aware of those things too.
I just don't want to diminish the role of an SRO versus other staff because it is unique and it's especially, it's a profession. And there is specific training that NASRO has training that can be provided as well as the training we get right now. So personally, I just hope it's something that we can take seriously and get the discussion moving forward. Budget talks or no budget talks, I don't think anything should get in the way of that. It's a top priority.
Is there anything that doesn't involve programs or people that can be cut anymore? I think we've kind of filleted everything off now.
Well, that's probably a deeper answer than what I can give you right now. We'd have to do some deep diving. So, and I think eventually the board would likely need to be presented with options, and then as a board, you'd have to decide the who, what, why. So,
So is this part of our overall 24-25 budget meeting closed session, or is this a separate closed session? I mean, what are we thinking for everybody here?
well, I guess my recommendation would be that we have a closed session underneath the allowed policy to talk specifically about our school safety. Within that, if some branches end up kind of extending beyond some of that as related to school safety, if we're looking at budget and budgeting for an SRO and some of the components that go with that, that would still be allowable to happen in that same closed session, if that makes sense. But it has to be directly related, obviously, to that topic, but we could. So I think for me, it would be helpful just getting a little bit of direction of, like, how soon do you want this closed session to occur? Is it the next meeting in May? Is it, what other information would be helpful? Sounds like, we have a desire for a few more people to join, which is great. We can make all that happen. I just need to know from the board kind of here's what we would like next.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that next meeting that we look at that, yeah.
I think right now, we're just like, so your discussion point would be that you would prefer next meeting.
That's correct.
When would be, like, as far as kind of your preliminary budget for next year, when were you thinking to present that to us?
So our goal was being able to present compensation specifically in June. So whether it was the first or second meeting, I don't know, but that's been our goal. That way we get through May, a few other contingencies that sometimes happen in May, but to give us the best possible information, looking at what we've got headed into next year. So we certainly have time, but if it's the next meeting, great. I mean, we can make it happen and pull some things together. I don't know the availability of everybody else that maybe need to be there, but that can be the goal if that's the desire of the board.
Would it be beneficial to have that information before you work on that compensation package? Or
Well, I
would
think
it
it's-
be better to know the compensation package so that we
Yeah,
can
I think it's a
discuss?
horse apiece, right? Like,
Yeah.
I will need some direction from the board as a whole. Yes, we want a full-time SRO, make it happen, or present us some options, or, and I can do all of that, and maybe it's a little bit of everything, because, again, that'll be a give and take somewhere, because we budgeted this even for going into next year. We currently have it as a line item as it is right now. Not that that can't be changed, obviously, but, because I do think it'll be important too, just to kind of get a grander understanding of just some of the budget components of, between curriculum, which we're always over, and I'm certainly not indicating that school safety shouldn't take a priority, but all of these things mesh together when we're talking budget. So it's just a bigger conversation, that's all.
So,
It kind of sounds like we should maybe have the budget stuff first. I don't know.
I was gonna say, I would prefer to have a closed session with chief and lieutenant before that,
Before
just
the-
to fully understand like what,
Mhm.
we talk about response times, we talk about schedules, availability, kind of forecasting out, what do you see in your department? Like, I think it'd be nice to have an idea of that, have some of the closed door discussions that we had last year, just to make sure that we're on the same page, and then I think I can make a better decision. Rather than the budget piece first, I'd rather have a conversation ahead.
I'm fine either way.
Stuff because they both affect each other.
But yeah,
Mhm.
but this conversation is informational, you know, so I think I would rather have the informational piece to then go into the budget piece, rather than the budget piece and
Right.
feel like now I have to make a decision because I already saw the numbers. I'd rather just have the kind of the conversation first.
And it wouldn't be a motion coming out of that meeting, it'd be more just.
It'd be direction to,
Okay.
right, I guess that'd be my opinion. I would feel good then giving my opinion on my direction to you based on that conversation.
But there would not necessarily have to be action coming out of the closed session.
Not action,
Just-
discussion.
Just a deeper conversation.
Mhm.
So would you be more comfortable if you want to check your calendars and then maybe get back to us as far as if that next board date or the following board date would work, and then we can put that on our schedule?
May 20th, is that what you're?
Yes.
I don't want to put you on the spot either, so if you'd rather just,
You could get back to us.
yes,
If you would-
you can get back to us. and
Chief,
then
if
we
you
can
want to
go.
follow up with me
Yeah,
and just
no.
let me know.
We got a green light here.
Okay.
Okay.
Abby and John, you can let me know.
We got a green.
Green light here.
Okay, so we'll do it then with first discussion in closed session at our earliest meeting that everybody's available. And then at that point, if there's specific questions that we want to direct to you, Shannon, as far as, okay,
Sure.
looking at budget, then we'll do that the next time. But this then, we're kind of going in clean slate, not necessarily budget related, but we're going in SRO related and what our needs of district are.
So does the 20th work for the board? Can we just decide that right now?
It doesn't work for me. but-
No, okay.
But I could call in some.
Are we talking about a clear time slot again, or?
Well, so closed session would be following then the regular
Okay, got it.
session.
All right.
Sorry, I have not missed a meeting in a year and a half, but I'm missing May 20th.
Yeah, I could make May 20th.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So the other option, is June 3rd is our first June meeting.
I will not be here June 3rd, so I prefer the 20th.
Okay.
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 The other thing, I guess to speak to Steve's point, you had talked about NASRO. I don't know what the board feels. I'm familiar with NASRO. I don't need to hear from them. I think a conversation with these guys, and then just knowing NASRO, but if people don't know NASRO, do you think it's valuable to, have that? I guess it's up to the board. But I don't want to dismiss, you brought it up, so I don't want to dismiss it.
I would like to have one of them available, one of the leadership that has agreed to provide their testimony. That would be nice, just so we have some questions about their effectiveness.
I don't think it would hurt. They kind of do a nice job of kind of laying out the role of an SRO, their training, you know. They do a nice job of kind of laying it out. They also have like real world case numbers, case studies, examples and stuff that they can share too. Just a little bit more neatly put together than maybe what we would put together. So, yeah, I think it'd be beneficial.
Well, there was a program on Minnesota Public Radio where the president of NASRO was part of the discussion, a guest on the program. So if anybody wants to look up NASRO, Minnesota Public Radio, it's 47 minutes long. You can listen to it while you drive.
You talking about Mr. Rudy Perez?
Yes.
Okay. And he could probably make himself available to you. So I'll check on it.
Is everybody good with that? Okay, then, anything else as far as that discussion? Then we'll move on to the superintendent report.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Okay, so I have kind of a quick, maybe not quick, but referendum update and maybe more of a consideration for the board. So I attached a memo because I'd like to have a discussion about reevaluating our last student day across campus. So in my memo, I provided multiple bullet points really kind of talking about the massive task that our elementary staff has in front of them to pack up and box literally the entire building in preparation for the project that's starting literally 8 o'clock a.m. on June 4th. June 4th, that entire building is shut down. No one from our staff will be able to access that building again until it opens up in August. But as Pam and I have had lots of conversation, she's had lots of conversation with her staff, really trying to figure out what's the best way to honor staff in terms of recognizing that this is a really, really big task. If you haven't been in an elementary classroom for a while, elementary teachers have a lot of stuff. And we want to make sure that they have the time that they need that doesn't necessarily involve weekends and nights to be able to pack up their room. So kind of the first step in that is our next professional development day, May 13th. We have designated that entire day solely to the staff being able to pack. We have some support staff coming in, we have a few students that are coming in, but that'll be really kind of the best opportunity for them to at least start that process. And the problem is that there's still 3 weeks of school after that. So the reality of them being able to finish all that packing on the 13th just is not a thing. They still need access to books and resources and toys and materials to be able to teach for another 3 weeks. So again, Pam and I had a lot of conversation of what does that look like, and listening to staff, really kind of taking their voice in terms of what they would need. So I am recommending that we move the last student day for elementary students from May 31 to May 30. That would then give the elementary staff May 31st, a day without students to be able to finish up all the rest of their packing. I have a little caveat that I want to add on to that. So my memo specifically mentions that middle school and high school would be in session kind of regularly scheduled that day. I would certainly not be opposed to pushing for the entire district to have the last student day be on that Thursday, the 30th. I didn't put that in here initially, frankly, because I was kind of starting out small. I don't know what the board is willing to support, so I was kind of starting with the highest priority is the elementary. There's certainly some value for probably multiple reasons if we have the last day for everybody be on the 30th. My vision for that would be then staff from the middle school and high school would be over at the elementary school, assigned to classrooms, helping to pack up. I did contact Kelly Emerson, who schedules our community day for high school, which is always on the last day. That's already been pushed out as the 31st. I asked her how hard it might be to switch it to the 30th, and she said it would be no problem. I contacted Sarah at the middle school. They have one field trip scheduled for the 31st that she thought they could easily move to the 30th. So logistically across campus, I think it could work. Now, I'm also cognizant of just, parents and community and wanting to make sure that we're responsive to, understanding that, not having school for a day where parents expected school certainly can cause some struggles for some families. So we do have school age care open that day. Potentially, if we didn't have school for any students on the 30th, or excuse me, the 30th, that potentially could pull some babysitters, which might be helpful too. So I didn't intentionally exclude the other buildings for any other reason than I frankly was just starting small to focus on the highest priority, which is getting that building packed up. But if the board would support or entertain also extending it to the other two buildings, I think that would be fantastic. I connected with the admin team too, and no concerns there. But I do have a significant concern if we don't provide some sort of plan or time for our staff in that building to be able to pack, because it is a massive job. Just want to add one more thing. The last time we did this, when we had our construction for the high school and middle school, that was the same spring that we shut down for COVID. So staff were able to kind of pack at their leisure. We didn't really have to worry about students in the building, because it wouldn't have been me at the time, but the superintendent at the time would have likely come to you and asked for something similar, because those are just really, really big jobs. So, so I'm hoping that the board will support some version of that. Again, I think if we wanted to end the entire year on the 30th, that being the last day for everyone, we could do that. I do have instructional hours kind of all set and ready to go for every building. If we removed one student day, we would still be well ahead of where we need to be in terms of what DPI requires for instruction. As a reminder, DPI tracks instructional hours. For teachers, they're tracked by contract days, so I'm not asking to forgive contract days. Teachers would still be working the same number of days they would even if we didn't take away a student day. But in terms of any sort of instructional hours, we are good to go, because we didn't use any snow days this year. We didn't have any 2-hour late starts. We are well ahead of where we are most years, because typically that isn't the case. So,
I was
questions?
going to ask where we
Yeah.
landed on hours, and
Yep.
why not, would it be helpful to have 2 extra days to pack? I mean, where are we on hours compared to any of the year, and
Yeah.
why 1, why not 2 days?
So first answer is we could do 2 days. We build in 2 days typically every year just to make sure we have a little bit of a cushion. Anything beyond 2 days, then we start to get into an issue with our high school instructional hours, so I wouldn't want anything beyond that. Frankly, the biggest kind of concern, if that's even the word, is just community. I think about perception, I hear a lot about student achievement, those kinds of things. Would I support 2 days? Sure. Do we have the 2 days? Absolutely we do. So I think kind of at this point, it'll be what the board is willing to kind of support. No shortage, of course, of things, not only between the packing. If we had a second day, plenty of things in terms of professional development and things that we could kind of tackle. We have a new strategic plan we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up 90-day plans at the building. So certainly ways that we could use that time. But I literally started off as small as possible. And, sure, we could do 2 days would be the max. Beyond that, we would have an issue.
Being there was no inclement weather, I would support 2 days. Kind of a rare year that we had no off.
I would support, I think if we do the elementary, it makes sense to do elementary, middle, and high school.
Sure.
I'm a little leery about the 2 days, because I feel like 2 days versus 1 day, as far as parents think of some of those, as far as childcare. I mean, 1 day you can make it work. I think 2 days, especially that it's already May 6th, I'm a little bit leery about that. I look at like a Friday. But yeah, I mean, I fully support giving the elementary time. And then I like what you said. I mean, if it's across campus, then there can be other people to help. And I just look at families with kids in multiple schools. I think just to have consistent, like, okay, this is the last day, is just,
Sure.
to me, more clear cut.
And did say Kids Club is open,
Yep.
right?
Yep, so, and it's open for, even if you're a family that doesn't typically access Kids Club, any family will be able to access it that day or 2 days, whatever that sounds like. You don't have to already be registered. Leslie and I have a plan put together. Well, she has some information to send out. So any family could access school age care if they needed to, even if they don't typically use it.
I agree with Lacey on 1 day. I think parental disruption could be a little much with 2 days.
So I agree with that.
But yeah, 1 day for all the schools, elementary, middle, and high school.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we make the last student day of school May 30th for all buildings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The last day of school will be May 30th.
Thank you.
I can hear those kids.
I know. The kids are happy, staff are happy, all's good, so, thank you.
Okay, anything else, Shannon, for you for superintendent report?
No, that was my one agenda item tonight.
Okay. Then moving on to our business office update. Dave, you're up.
Dave, there's a mouse under
saw that.
it, instead of flip it on.
Good evening. I have a number of items to touch base with the board on. While I'm working on this, I wanted to offer to the new board members, Danny and Steve, I try to offer one-on-one meetings or two-on-one meetings if you'd like to talk about school finance in depth. If you have questions you want to bring along, if you want to look at anything in particular, shoot me an email, we'll set that up. In addition, I'll be updating the process presentation that's online. The last time I updated those charts was a few years ago, so it's not current charts, not currently accurate as far as some of the population goes, but I can go through that. Then I typically, over the years, would go through that after new board members are seated and we're have the officers elected and such, so we can look at that also in the future if that's helpful. Today I can run through the end of March, Q3 budget to actual report, which is on the financial reports page. And then we can touch on some of the things regarding budget, related to some of the discussion you had earlier already tonight, and where we're at in that process and what we normally do and what we can do going forward this year as you prefer and as we need. So jump in at any point if you have questions. I tend to go through these a little quicker at this point just because they all look very similar, and try to hit the main points. So here we go, jumping in. This is the general fund, Fund 10. We take out the transfers to other funds, and then we look at year over year where we're at expenditure-wise. Similar to last year, a little less overall through March, end of March, Q3. And here's the by summary expenditure function. This is in the reports you get every month at the business meeting. And some notes about that chart. These pie graphs are the budget and then where we are through March. The main thing we see over time is that the cost for open enrollment is significant, but it doesn't show up until the end of the year. Otherwise, things kind of just shift back and forth maybe a little bit, but generally are on track every quarter. Even more summarized compared to the prior year and in chart form. Here's by object. This is what the money is spent on. And then here's closer examination. This we'll look at a little bit, just because this is where we can see some things that we talk about every year. And it's a good place to point out that every year some things are coming in under budget and some things are coming in over budget. That's how it goes every year.
Can you go back to that pie chart?
Yep.
Chart. Just to make sure I understand, one is for year previous?
This is the budget for this year.
Oh, okay, that's about it.
Yep, and this is where we're at through March.
So the green is the open enrollment outside of the district?
This purple right here, this chunk.
Okay, all right.
And so it's tiny right now because there are some tuitions that are paid from that during the year, but the majority of that is an entry at the end of the year. So for all these pull-out items, I have some notes underneath. Our utilities through the end of March are running lower, especially gas and oil for heat. Electricity is also a bit lower than we expected. And as I had mentioned earlier, I think we should see that a little more savings also through the last quarter with some of the construction activities. Snow removal, extremely low. Might not be our record low because we do have a little bit more that's not applied yet, a little bit of invoice that was paid that didn't come through March, but compared to last year, it's a significant difference. The B&G department, you can see the notes that include some other things as well. IT and curriculum, those two, as I've mentioned before, are pretty much always right on budget. Their timing changes year over year. They might buy some Chromebooks or something at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, but they generally come in right on budget. Legal fees, again, are tracking low, back to normal, I would say. Tuitions for student dual credit or college of the schools or with the tech colleges, I would say are on budget. The timing of when we receive those invoices also varies sometimes throughout the year. Transportation on budget, subs higher than last year. I have a note down here. In all categories, a bit higher. Last year we ended just under budget, so we'll continue to look at that as we go. And then the non-vested HRA running a bit high still, though you can see through December we were running over budget. Utilization has decreased a bit the last quarter, and we're still a little high, but we'll see how that goes. Here's special ed costs running very similar to the prior year. And then revenues. The revenue percentages are a little different year over year. That's down here. And a lot of that has to do with last year we had a huge amount of federal funds grants claim in the last quarter. And this year we don't have nearly as much left to claim there. And then cash flow timing, you'll see these charts every quarter as well. This is month over month. The blue is the revenue, the red is the expenditure, and the expenditures are generally pretty flat until June when we book a lot of our year-end entries and it shoots up. But the revenues are up and down, and that's why we do need to manage our cash flow every year. And here's the cumulative. So revenues have caught up. We're not going to get more big revenues until June when the big state aid payment comes in. And we'll book our last tax revenue payment as well, or receipt, but we won't receive that till August. But we book it in June because that's our fiscal year. So again, summary, we're on pace. You can see the comps and where we are in the categories compared to the different parts, different ways we view the year. And in general, I'd say we're cautiously optimistic. We're running well this year. There's a number of areas that are under, there's some that are over, but there's a number of things that are unique to this year as well that are, I think, putting some pressure, downward pressure on expenditure. So I think so far so good. And this will play into our, obviously into our discussion for budget for next year as well. But before I talk about that, are there any questions on this? And this is on the website. Danny, Steve, if you want to talk about this in depth at all, let's have a meeting and we'll jump into it. So one of the components of the budget that we had talked about previously this year has to do with one of Shannon's goals in our strategic plan is looking at alternative sources of funding for our operations. And one of the things that we've talked about specifically that many districts have looked at is moving middle school athletics and activities to Fund 80. Now, that's not a big overall expenditure area, but if we were to say, well, if we don't move it to Fund 80, we wouldn't be able to fund it anymore, then DPI accepts that and that's justified as a reason to do that. What that entails is Fund 80 is separate than Fund 10. It's a different thing than in the general operation budget, and so you have a separate levy for it. And the school board can choose to set that levy at whatever they need to run the Fund 80 for the year. Right now, we run Kids Club, school age care, wraparound care through Fund 80, and that's it. In prior years, we've run or tried to run some community ed courses. That's where we would do that. They haven't necessarily been self-sufficient. And then we didn't have a director for that for a number of years now. The Kids Club program is self-sufficient, and so we've never levied for it in my time here. Many of the districts around us do levy for Fund 80. In fact, I think all of our neighboring districts do. So this is a choice that we would propose and you could make as a board to set a levy to pay for these things, in this case, middle school athletics and activities. I did meet with Troy and Shannon and Trent and worked with our business office staff to try to see what does that cost. It's not a huge dollar amount. So we looked at some supplies, reffing, transportation, and then stipends, which is the biggest one. And at this point, we're thinking we could probably transfer about $60,000 around there from Fund 10, levy for that in Fund 80, but we would levy at a higher amount because many of these things are going up. And we finalized that number, but mainly, right now, I just would like to know if that sounds like something to continue to pursue, or if that's, you're not interested in looking at that anymore.
I'm interested in looking at it.
Well, that was just part of our recent discussion with Troy when our refs are minimal for what we pay them, and we didn't have money for uniforms this year. We cut a bunch of stuff last year,
Well,
maintaining that budget.
And
I think
so if we had the $60,000 that we weren't using for that next year, the decision would be what do we use that for? Right, so it might not be that it's, we're gonna get new nets or something. It might not be for other athletics. But that would be part of the discussion, and so the pie would be a little bigger.
Why only middle school? Can you include high school, or what's the
No.
difference?
No, so, since it's WIAA at the high school level,
Oh,
you
okay.
can't. But additionally, to be something that can be in community ed and Fund 80, it has to be open to the public, open to all kids of that age range, without restriction.
Got it.
And available, so like not during times when community members wouldn't be able to participate.
Got it.
Can you put any of the non-WIAA?
There's really not opportunity to put other high school things there.
We've looked really.
No, I just,
Yeah, yeah.
There is a wide variety of things that districts look at. And DPI has changed a little bit what they say over the years, where when I first started, they said, literally, if it would not exist but for Fund 80, you cannot do it. And now they say, well, if it makes sense and if that's what your school board and your community want, then we can talk about it and see if it could work. And that's why a lot of districts are either have or are looking at moving their middle school athletics to Fund 80.
what other, so this is all you've looked at so far moving, or are there other things?
As far as moving, this is what we've looked at so far. We've talked about other things. This is the one that seems feasible. There's also been the other discussion about what is daycare as a possibility in the future, where you go down to infant rather than just school age. Is that something that could be a recruiting tool, whether it's for open enrollment or for staff, or just as a community benefit? I think all those things are definitely possibilities and would be benefits of having that, but that would require a bigger levy, because we'd have to outfit to meet code this building if this is where it is housed, with some structural changes, construction related things, and then some of the labor and startup cost would be pretty decent size, I think. And we'd have to wait and see to see if it gets to be self-sufficient over time.
Far-fetched, but since we're already talking about cutting SRO, is that something, is that tied close enough to community?
I have heard of some districts that can, if they're cutting it, and it has to serve the community. It has to be the benefit to everybody, so there has to be some tie-in where there's other things that are going on.
Could we?
But I have heard other districts talk about this. Another thing that they talk about is transfer of service, where again, if the district cuts it, but then brings it back, and they get a transfer of some aid that the village might get to us to cover that, that's a mechanism that some districts use.
I mean, in the report tonight, we heard that would be in the community, X amount of time.
Absolutely.
Option,
This is,
I don't know.
so we don't want to
Right.
jump in without understanding where you're at. We have been talking about a lot of things. What I've heard tonight from those of you who have spoken up is that it's interesting. We can look in as much as possible to the SRO as well. I don't know if there has to be something where we had gotten rid of it and then bring it back, or if there's a big community component or not. But we can look into that much further if you'd like.
And you would have some percentages, I'm guessing, what things cost for a levy amount?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so obviously the dollar amount is the dollar amount, right? Like if we're saying we're gonna levy 80,000 for middle school athletics, that's the dollar amount. If you look at last year's property value, we say, what if we had done that last year on the mill rate? Then we go from 721 to 726. That's the mill rate change. But if we're talking about, but if we're talking about doing this next year, we're assuming the mill rate is going up, of course. It's, all else equal, this mill rate's going down regardless, unless we're adding costs. So we have the two things, the mill rate comparison and the actual dollar amount. And so the mill rate, based on this alone, would certainly be negligible. But the dollar amount is the dollar amount.
What was the calculation you came up with?
5 cents per 100,000 based
Okay.
on last year.
For that sample?
Yes.
Yes, for 80,000 for middle school athletics and activities, yes.
And when you said something about an increase, I think what you were talking about was, we always project a increase in the property value of the district. Is that correct?
We are now, yes, we don't always, but yes, the last 5 or 6 years has been double-digit increases.
And we don't ever predict it's gonna be double digit, but it's been higher than we've predicted for
Yes.
the last several years.
Yes, everything that we've sent out for both of our past referenda have come in much cheaper than we predicted, because the property values keep going up. And there's I don't remember off the top of my head, because we break it down between new calculation and just inflation, and a portion of that is both. So yes, the property values have been going up, obviously, and that is the calculation where you're dividing by that number. So the bigger that gets, the smaller the mill rate goes, based on the same dollar amount we're levying.
Well, Dave, I would be in favor of you looking for anything we can do to put into Fund 80.
I agree.
So even if if we're not able to include an SRO in Fund 80, it still frees up money in Fund 10.
Yes. That's the middle school athletics and activities. That's exactly what it does, and that's why we started looking at it.
Dave, one thing I haven't heard just in general this year is, we talked a little bit about insurance, you talked about it on there, maybe a little higher. We have to re-up this summer, might we? Or are we locked in for next year?
Yeah, no, we're renewing, and the insurance you see on here is our commercial insurances, so like work comp, property, liability, unemployment. That's the insurance line on those reports that you see. The health and medical insurance is in the benefits line. So yes, we have talked with J Counter and Health Partners. And the renewal that we just received, like last week or the week before?
2 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks.
Came in at 5%, which was better than we were expecting. We asked them to go back to look at a couple other variables, because we do have to adjust our HRA contribution again this year per IRS. So we're saying, well, what does it look like if we add on a second year, like we do sometimes, like you're referring to? What does it look like if the deductible is bigger and the district contributes more to the HRA as needed? Those different plan changes could give us a different percentage renewal. So we asked for that information before we bring something forward and have them implement.
When will we see that, I guess, okay, 'cause that's always, but it's been a big number, a couple renewals in a row.
It is big.
Very large number. 5%.
What's that?
Do you know when she's returning that?
I don't believe it was this week. I think we can anticipate next week she was gonna get back with the information of the variables. We asked her to present some other options.
Because she takes that to Health Partners, and they negotiate, or they will take to their actuaries different scenarios that we asked for. So we're waiting, but it shouldn't be too long.
Did you get a quote on the property and casualty yet for next year, or is it coming?
We have I've sent out our renewal information, so we're waiting for our quotes.
Okay.
Any more questions on that part? The last thing was to build into this, I'm currently working on compensation packages. Some of the things, some of the ways that it can look could be different than what we've done in the past. Year over year, I'll bring a preliminary budget in June with whatever all of the assumptions are as part of that. We talk about the assumptions and we go from there. We understand it's a point in time and we don't finalize it till October. And for a number of years now, we've been waiting until we know more before we finalize what the compensation is. And so we've had retro pays at various points during the year. There are scenarios where we could look at compensation that's similar to the rest of the state or the rest of CISA. We could look at different options that might, in June, cause us to have a deficit next year. And if we're looking at how we're ending the year and we want to compare and combine 2 years, if we're surplus this year and deficit next year, that's something we could talk about. Because the timing is such that the longer we wait, the more that we know. And that's how we've done things over the years, because we've been very tight the last few years. But that's something I wanted to hear from you. It sounded from your earlier discussion like the sooner the better, and see what that looks like. But as we talked about before, we do have a limited amount of revenue that we can expect to increase in the revenue limit for next year based on the state budget. We have gotten our last bit of ESSER funding, and so that's a little bit of a hole in revenue for next year. And we have some of our, things that we know are increasing outside of staffing, outside of compensation as well. So just wanted to get a feel for what you were looking for as far as timing. As far as timing of what do you want to talk about and how soon would you like to talk about it in detail?
I guess it depends what the area is, because I look at if this involves people and staff, if there's like cuts in that area, then I think sooner the better.
So we're not talking about reducing
Okay.
No reduction.
Just overall,
anything at this
okay.
point. We're
Then-
talking about what does compensation look like
Okay.
for next year?
Then I'm fine personally with me. I know it's like the whole budget area, it's just as far as a picture, I think if it doesn't involve, people going to look and overall, I think as the time when we're most comfortable, but I don't wanna say we wanna do this so fast that then we kinda have to pull the brakes because we realize we missed something.
And over the years, we've had, a number of years where we knew that we would be in a position to offer various things for the next year early on. In these last couple of years, we haven't been there. The thing, like any contract and anything that you approve, once we do it, we're doing it. And so that's where, generally, if we're talking about it earlier on, I'm presenting you with something that's more conservative based on what we don't know. And if we're talking about it later on, then we know more. And it's more certain.
Because we are in the second year of the state budget, doesn't that make it feasible to be more certain earlier than it was last year?
Yes, up to the point of the revenue that we expect to get within the state budget. So if we're talking about trying to meet a certain benchmark for percentage, we might not be there just with that. And so that's why I'm saying if we're looking at considering where we end up this year as part of what we do next year, then it would behoove us to wait a little longer and see how that's going.
Whatever decision we make on compensation, though, that is going to be moving forward, so you can't finance it simply on being surplus this year.
Correct. Exactly right. So in that kind of scenario, if there's a target that the board wants to meet, then the discussion is if it doesn't fit necessarily entirely in next year's budget, but we're gonna say we have a surplus from this year to apply to that, then the discussion becomes the following year, either the state budget will cover it, or we will run a year deficit and consider going to referendum or make cuts. That's how those pile on top of each other, those decisions. And that is something that districts do. Good or bad, it's a local decision. How do we want to approach this? I know the discussions that we've had the last few years have been difficult as far as people aren't happy with the compensation plan, with what we've been able to offer. And so that's why there's a lot of different approaches, and we have to do what's best for Somerset. And some of that does involve a little bit of consideration. What does it look like in the future if we do this or if we do that?
One variable, of course, is enrollment. If enrollment
Yes.
decreases more, so it's kind of been on a downward trend, correct?
It's been flat. This year I think it went up. So enrollment in the revenue limit is a factor now where every student that comes up essentially is a positive. If open enrollment deficit continues to widen, that's a negative.
Right. So, I mean, when we're talking about the Fund 80, Fund 10, and, you know, what we're cutting or, you know, adding services like SRO, you never know how that's gonna affect enrollment. So, I mean, that's just a consideration, sports funding, those schools.
Absolutely.
Whatever parents believe is like benefit to enrolling here versus elsewhere.
Yes, yes, and for us, our factors with knowing what the state is giving us for the second year, all that remains for us to see is what is our student count doing?
And we don't know that until the third Friday in September.
It's correct, that's the official count, yes, that's what we use for the revenue limit calculation. It has been relatively flat for a number of years, sometimes up, down a little, but relatively flat. The open enrollment one, it has been becoming more out and in, and so that creates a deficit of funding as well, if that trend continues.
So you're looking for a direction?
No, so again, compensation, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on what we're looking at as it fits into the overall budget picture that we're building. The thing I really wanted to know about was the Fund 80, and I've heard what you have to say about that. This was more of an update, again, and going through where we're at through March, and offering the one-on-one or the two-on-one discussions, and or coming back with the bigger picture. You know, this is school finance presentation that I do periodically. So that's the budget update or the business office update today.
Well, I think when you do the budget for us, or you review it in June,
Mhm.
you've always done a pretty good job of saying, okay, if it's 1%, and you're gonna add this, or if we do the steps, it's this, so I'm adding this hold into my, we usually have that for us.
Yes, and
How do you guys, this is what it looks like if we do 3%.
I will have that again. I think I just wanted to, you know, put out there that it's, if there's benchmarks that we want to see, if there's things we want to reach, and it doesn't fit in what it looks like at the moment, we don't have to do it right now, or we can talk about, is this a multi-year discussion right now for how we're going to approach it? Districts take all sorts of approaches to do this, and there's no, I was gonna say there's no wrong way, there probably are wrong ways, but you have to do what's right for Somerset, for our district, and that's where, you know, your feedback is vital in what are we aiming for? And what are we gonna do as we go along based on what we choose?
So more information to come.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and that, yes, I'm sorry, that's the form, that's the things we'll be talking about, and the way we'll be talking about it.
Great.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to school board reorganization. The order, just as kind of discussion of the process, Alicia sent out an email stating what this process would look like. So also according to our officers, 152 policy, after Alicia sent that out, Shannon will take over this process and begin by taking nominations for president. And at that point, when nominations are made, you repeat, a second is not required for a nomination, and then would be asked if if that person is willing. When nominations seem to be complete, Shannon will ask if there are any further nominations. If there are none, she will say nominations are closed. And if there's only one nomination and no members present wish to make further nominations, it will be declared that that nominee is elected. There are slips at our table spots, and board members will circle what area we are voting for and then circle the name. Alicia will collect papers, and then Shannon and Alicia will review. Based on your selection, you may only circle a name for a person who is officially nominated, and Shannon will then announce. And after that, the new president has been established, that person will take over. So I will hand it over to Shannon.
Okay. Any other questions? Lacey did a good job giving an overview. All of you should have your slips in front of you. Perfect. Okay, no questions? All right, so I will start the process by taking nominations for president. If you would like to nominate a board member, say, I nominate blank for president.
I nominate Bruce Belargin for president.
Bruce Belargin is nominated. Bruce, are you willing to be president?
Yes.
Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, I am going to say nominations for president are closed. Since there is only one nomination and no members present wish to make further nominations, it is officially declared that Bruce Belargin is the new president.
Unanimously.
And my job is over, and I'm passing it on to you. You want my cheat sheet?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. All right, so. Okay. I guess nominations for vice president.
I nominate Danny Erickson.
I'd like to nominate Lacey.
Danny and Lacey. Anybody else? Okay.
Do you want to ask them if they're willing?
Or, Lacey, are you willing?
Yes.
Danny, are you willing? Sure means yes.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Okay. Okay. So then, I guess we nominate one and then we give them to Shannon?
Yep.
All right, so circle,
Do you want to ask if there's any other nominations?
are there any other nominations?
All right, we'll look at them together. One for Lacey. One for Lacey. One for Danny. One for Lacey. One for Lacey. One for Lacey. One for Danny. So Lacey is the new vice president. Okay.
Initial.
Okay. Thanks, Lacey. The next one is clerk, so we'll do nominations for clerk.
Ian McDonald.
Ian, are you willing to be the clerk?
Yes, I am.
Are there any other nominations for clerk? Okay. Ian? And then the last one, treasurer. Any nominations for treasurer?
I nominate Steve for treasurer.
I nominate Lori.
Steve, are you willing to be the treasurer?
Yes.
Lori, are you willing to be the treasurer?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, fill out our sheets.
Ready?
Yeah.
You're ready.
Yep.
All right. One for Lori. One for Lori. One for Lori. One for Steve. One for Lori. One for Steve. One for Steve. So, Lori is the new treasurer. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so, that. Okay, so then we'll continue down to item 8. Policy committee members. So we've had a policy committee, last time it was Lori, Ian, and Mark, right, last year. So I don't think we just offered up who would like to be part of that committee, right? Maybe up to 3. How often were you guys meeting?
It depends on the updates from Neola.
It's like quarterly, right? Oh,
Sometimes
I mean,
it depends on when they get the updates, how many there are.
And when do you usually meet during a weekday, correct? During the day?
Was it, I think,
The committee meetings for policies. They used to be at night. Because the last few times have been during the day.
yes, I'm aware.
Anyway, I would be interested in serving on the policy committee again. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time.
What's your specialty?
Who, does anybody else like to be on policy
I
committee?
would
Andy? Steve? Ian, you want to be on it?
I'd do it again.
So if we have more than 3, then we'll do a vote. We have sheets of paper ready in the event that more than 3.
I am not familiar.
I believe the policy says that the president appoints.
Let me look at that.
I will, I'll bring it up. I mean, we can definitely vote if you'd like to, I just.
So we just put those 4 names out, and we also have something left, we can circle 3 of the 4.
you should get, if the policy
I
says.
think she's double checking, because
Yeah.
I think we looked at this,
Probably
Alicia.
clear.
I think so.
The president is authorized to appoint as soon after the annual reorganizational meeting as practical, members of the board to personnel, curriculum, building, grounds, and policy committees where they serve a term of 1 year. Ad hoc committees may be created and changed at any time by the president or a majority of the members present at any meeting at which the need for a committee becomes evident.
So is it a vote and then an appointment?
It's 155 is the
0155.
0155, yes, sir. I feel like the policy committee is the only one that's really, the other ones aren't committees.
So it says the president is authorized, but it doesn't say that the president shall. So we can vote.
That's why we
I
planned
would-
this in
That's
the
what I was
event that,
thinking, too. A vote, but then really it's an appointment of those three, based on.
different ones.
Okay, so let's take does anybody else want to be on the policy committee? Nat or Lacey?
No.
No.
So we have actually different sheets, so hang on.
Circle 3?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
What? All right, so Danny, Ian, Lori. Danny, Ian, Lori. Danny, Lori, Steve. Danny, Ian, Lori. Danny, Ian, Lori. Danny, Ian, Lori. Danny, Lori, Steve. All right?
So, Lori, Ian, and Danny.
Yes.
Okay. Be our policy committee members. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, they do a good job.
Fill you in later. All right, so then the delegate for CISA 11 convention.
Yeah, it's more than just being the delegate.
All the meetings that
Convention. It's for being the representative of, there's 31 or 32 schools in our CISA, and it's broken up by regions, and we have in our region 6 or 8 schools. And one school represents our little region at the CISA meetings. So the CISA convention is June 3rd, but then that person would also be representing our area because Somerset has been chosen to represent our 6 to 8 schools. And those are 3-year terms, and we're in either year 1 or year 2 of a 3 being the representative for CISA for our little area.
Sheree did it. You've done it. Anybody want to be the CISA rep?
I'll do it if nobody else wants to.
All right, Lori, you're up.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Lori. Here's this here. Okay, WASB delegate. I guess I don't know what we've done for that one.
That's for the state
Definitely.
convention in
Right.
January.
So we'll talk about it till later.
We don't have to do it right now.
We don't have to do it now, we put it on as just, we're gonna start adding this one to the annual, every time we do this time of year, we want this to be in the agenda. You know, we haven't sent anyone to the state convention in multiple years, I don't even know the last time it happened,
The
but,
last time was when I went.
yeah, when was that?
COVID, right?
No, it was before, yes. Did you say before?
Yeah.
Yes, it was before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah. So nothing we have to talk about now, but just getting it on the radar if that's something, and maybe that's a part of board development discussion in terms of heading back to that conference, whatever that looks like, we can talk about that then. But just keeping it on the radar that WASB suggests that we have a board member specifically designated as the delegate that would be able to speak to or potentially represent the district at the state convention as they're talking about different legislative things and that kind of thing, so.
And every year at the state convention, they have a big meeting, and there's one designated person from each school district, and motions are voted on, and so that delegate would be part of that voting body.
Yep. So maybe more to come.
we've had multiple people go to that.
Yeah.
Like the whole board actually last
Yeah.
year. Before I was on, before we were on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mark went to. Okay, well, we'll keep updating on that. That'll be the later in January. I think it's like 3 days down there. And then the Memorial Scholarship Representative. And Laura, you've done that for multiple years.
So that job entails being a member of the SMSF committee. There are monthly meetings. You will be expected to help fundraise, and the major fundraising is done through selling tickets to home events and selling the 50/50 tickets. The Somerset Memorial Scholarship Representative also it's designated in the SMSF bylaws that this person will evaluate all of the scholarship applications. And this year, I evaluated 76. And it took more than one day. So if anybody is interested in being the board person on the scholarship committee, I encourage you to do so.
Are they nameless on the applications?
Yes, it's student ID numbers.
I'm just wondering.
Would you like to break from that, Lori? Or is that something you enjoy doing?
I enjoy all of it except evaluating the scholarship applications. It reminds me of when I was an English teacher.
If you want a break, I would be willing, but if you'd like to continue and just, or if somebody else would like to take on that job.
Can we have multiple people on there?
If somebody else wants to be an official board representative, then I could certainly still be on the scholarship committee, yes.
And be the official representative?
Does anybody else want to do it? Am I taking- Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, so Lacey.
And
will
then we
be-
can vote, but Lori then can still, right?
I can still be on, yeah.
So Lacey will be the official board representative for the scholarship committee. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions in that category? All right, move on to policy updates. So, I think the best thing would be to pull up the Word document of the updating the active policies, probably, run through that. And I think we could start just by seeing if we have any questions. We'll just go right down the list. So the first one, obviously, 100 definitions. Was there any comments or questions about anything in 100? Again, we have a little cheat sheet in front of us. As you scroll through it, what Neil is updating, what the policy committee updated. And then as we get to one that has maybe some questions, we can come through as a board. But any comments on 100?
Most of these were minor or technical changes. The policy committee was fine with everything in here. They changed the name of the district records custodians, and they added titles to policies that were simply numbered.
Okay, if no one has any comments, we'll move on to the next one. Board powers. Mind to just read through it quick.
This one, again, the only addition was adding or otherwise under the supervision of school authorities. And the committee was good with this one.
Comments on board powers? 0122. Okay, 0144.3, conflict of interest.
The only addition to this one was adding bus driver because the state law changed and school board members can now be bus drivers with families in Austin.
Volunteer bus driver, right?
Yes, you do not.
Can't get paid.
Right.
Nothing, we'll just keep moving on. Clerk, there are a few items. Policy committee looked like they, need to check possibly before we took off of there.
No, this is pretty much the same as the other ones where there were no significant changes and the policy committee was good with it.
What does it mean Somerset has not selected this option?
It just has to do with the wording, instead of saying or designee, which may be completed with the assistance of the appropriate staff. And a lot of this is done by Alicia.
I was gonna say, that's me asking Alicia to help.
I see, okay.
Okay, independent educational evaluation, 2460.03.
The 100 miles and the $400 are what is in our current active policy, and we did ask Abby to take a look at that, and she said, yep, it's good to stay. And the committee was good with there was one other sentence added by Neola, and the committee was good with that. It just had to do with, if the cost was over, a timeline for notifying the people.
All right. Any questions, comments? We'll move on to the next one. Selection of instructional material and equipment, 2521.
And this is one you might remember, we discussed several times in previous meetings, those two paragraphs at the top. The board has come to a consensus on that earlier when we had it come back to the board several times in a row. The other changes are, just minor technical things.
So these paragraphs, these are Neola added.
These are what we have had. Remember when we had that same policy come back 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row?
Lower.
This is what we
Oh,
came
that's
up
right.
with.
That's right.
The board actually passed this in December, but
Yeah.
there was,
They updated.
there's, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay, student anti-harassment, 5517.
Most of the changes with this one have to do with adding the phrase "or groups of students" due to a situation in another school district. However, we did add the letter M to the 5th group of lettered examples. So if you scroll down several pages, there's a big long list of letters. It goes through I, and then it gives some examples, and then J, and a bunch of other examples, and then KL. M was an option that was on the original Neola template, and when we discussed it, we thought, we don't know why it wasn't included originally, but we thought it was important. We checked with Shannon, she agreed, so we added M. And then the only other thing that we needed to look at here was our compliance officers. For the last several years, it's been Abby and Trent. And we were gonna go with the 2 people being in the same positions. However, it's recommended that we have a person, one of each sex in these roles. And since our new assistant principal is a woman, I talked with Shannon about this earlier. Shannon, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, there's pros and cons, right? So I think we've liked the dynamic of keeping it with these two positions, so the Director of Pupil Services and the Assistant Principal. You know, most of the time, I guess luckily, we don't have to navigate this all that often, but most of the time Abby has typically been, you know, the go-to that's taken the lead. Trent has kind of been a backup. I would be comfortable leaving it with the position of Assistant Principal. And then if a situation came up where it was beneficial to potentially have a male involved, then we could look at another administrator potentially stepping in on that specific situation. But that would be my 2 cents.
Board comments?
Well, since Abby is the primary person who's been handling all these situations, I was thinking that we might want to keep it Trent and just, instead of changing the name, change the position. Because I'm hopeful that it would not go to him.
Well, that's where it gets the sticking point, right, because of his position, especially under Title IX, where the role of the compliance officers, and then it goes, they're the next level, right? It would just need to go to a different, if he's still with me, then it would have to just go to a different principal for a decision-making process. That's the tricky part of having a principal be in that role.
We can talk
They're a
about
decision
that.
maker.
Any other thoughts about keeping it as the assistant principal? What else should we interview? Keep it as a position or?
How often do we look at this one?
We'll have to bring it back when we'll have to update it, when we approve that position. Anyway. I guess
Does it
we-
have to be an administrator?
next month. We do it in the,
We talked about that.
We had talked about that too. I think that's most ideal because there could be some scenarios where there's some significant investigation, and I think the administrator might have a little bit more flexibility versus a classroom teacher to be able to do that. One thing we talked about too is maybe even, you know, getting some input here, bringing it back to the admin team, and then bringing back maybe an admin team recommendation. Abby and I really haven't discussed it in depth either, so maybe we could bring back
I would like to do that.
a formal recommendation the next time.
Thank you.
Okay.
all right, any other comments on this one? Anybody have an issue, I guess, with the M that was added, or review it again? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Look at this one again, and we'll look at them all again. 5610, suspension and expulsion.
There were very few changes, minor technical changes, and the committee was okay with the Neola recommendations on this. If it's this one, I'm not sure, there's a policy where it's this one, they take out or guardians. The reason is because in the definitions policy it was the first one, bylaws, in our policies, the word parent also refers to guardian.
Okay, we'll move on to 6325, procurement federal grants funds.
The committee was good with the Neola recommendations. A lot of them were just adding the titles to the numbered policies. There were a couple number changes
They increase the dollar amount.
from 150,000 to 250,000.
I think that's what we.
How was that number determined? That it went from 150
inflation. Things got so much more.
I mean, I figured, I was just wondering if there was a concrete.
Can't do anything for $150. Can't
It's
mobilize.
sad, it truly.
Okay, looks like that was changed a few times for there. Other comments, we'll move on to the next one, number 10, the policy 6610, non-district supported student activity accounts.
There's a stricken section in this policy because it is addressed in another policy. And at the very end of this policy, it was changed from after an account has not been used in a year, rather than it being transferred into Fund 10, it would be transferred into the student council's account. And Neola's reasoning on this was, with discussion with school districts, is that these funds are raised by the students. So rather than being rolled over into a Fund 10, which is school operations, it be put into another account that would be ongoing, that is student run.
Comments on that? Okay. Move on, 7740, facility security.
There's just that one part there added, and the committee was good with it. There's a couple word changes.
So we added,
So the utilized metal detectors, that's video surveillance, that's all added, that previously wasn't on.
Correct. And this doesn't mean necessarily all the time, but for example, once in a while, the school officers will come on school property, well, not, our village officers will come on school property, for example, with the dogs.
Mhm.
So it's like that.
any other comments on this policy? Questions? Okay, moving on to technology. Alicia, did you ever hear back from Madam Jason?
Yep, we did.
Okay.
And so that part at the end, that's all stricken. Those are going to be, so when you go down to where there's a bunch of green and orange, the equipment security. So because we do have the administrative guidelines, the recommendation is to keep the heading and that first paragraph that Alicia retyped in orange. So what's in orange there is exactly what Neola put. And then everything under it, A, B, and C, those specifics would go in the administrative guidelines, and Matt and Jason have contributed their recommendations, and those have gone to Shannon for the administrative guidelines.
So Shannon would add those.
So there's an administrative
Yeah.
guideline that goes with this
Yep.
policy, and whatever Matt and Jason
Yep.
recommended, yeah, that went to Shannon. Incorporated in the administrative guidelines.
Any comments? Technology? Okay. 7544, use of social media.
There was one sentence added, I believe, here, and the committee was good with it.
District approved volunteers are prohibited from using district approved social media platforms, sites to communicate privately with individual students. Any questions about social media? Okay, 8310, public records.
there was that one additional phrase near the top, and then the other changes were, technical, minor. The committee was good with it.
Okay, move on to student records. 8330.
There was one piece of this, the reason it's in here is because they added an option, and we are not going to take this option because our student ID numbers are connected to payment accounts in the district. And so we do not want student ID numbers to be included in a student directory. So because we're not taking the new option, this policy does not even need to come back for a second reading because nothing's being changed.
Any questions on that one? Anybody? All right. That's 8,500. Food services.
Some of this, it looks like there's a lot of strikeouts and additions, but it's pretty much really just rewording things and putting them in a different place. So that thing about discrimination up at the top is then put someplace else. Or it's in a different policy. A lot of changing. Instead of writing out United States Department of Agriculture, making it USDA. The part about the substitutions, we just talked about not long ago, and this is what we had sent it to food service to ask if there were a certain number of days that they wanted to get the medical certification, and they said no.
Okay, any other questions?
Ian, was there anything else you wanted to add on that one?
Okay, so I'm just starting with 9130, public requests, suggestions, or complaints.
The only addition to this one was the part about the grievance procedures. The rest of the stuff is. And because we have our, in our student handbooks, the part about library materials, so it's classroom instructional materials.
Are we still gonna have something in there just directing people to 25, 22? Just in case.
It's in the student handbooks.
Yeah, I know the opt-out, all that is, but just mentioning 25, 22?
Usually we don't, if it's a different policy, it's a different policy, we don't.
Don't have to include it, just to read
No.
Is the drafting L selection should be consistent with policy that doesn't stay in this one?
No, because we didn't choose that option. They're completely separate.
Any other comments on that one? Okay, so that is our last one on. So now these ones, next one, 2413 health education that are, these are new and that we don't have. Give us some comments on these. Steve, I don't know where your comment, which one yours is tied to,
Oh, it's the first one,
the 24.
the striking of the notification of parents.
Yeah, the reason that is stricken is because it refers to policy 2414. And if you look at policy 2414, it is clearly written out all of the procedures that are, you maybe call it up quickly. That policy is in our active current policies. It's not one that's being changed. Let's see, but all the language surrounding parent notification is spelled out in detail in 2414. And that's why it's not in this one again. Down toward the bottom, it says the district shall provide parents annually with an outline of the program used in their child's grade level, as well as information regarding how the parent may inspect the complete program and instructional materials. Prior to use in the classroom, the program shall be made available to parents for inspection. And looking at the comments that you had written at the top, I think that was what you were concerned about.
But there is human growth and development included with it under this umbrella of health education.
Right.
So then that language should, in my opinion, stay with this policy.
I agree. There's a reason they put that in, I would think.
No, Neola recommended taking it out. And the reason they recommended taking it out is because it's referenced in policy 2414.
The human growth.
Yes.
I think 2413 is specific to that statute at the end of it that's giving them the opportunity to have an alternative. So that's the statute you're covered, that's not.
The human growth and development.
So in 2414, it does state
Right.
the piece that was basically struck out.
Yeah.
Can I just want to pull up that 2414.
Yeah, that's what I was reading from.
Okay, oh, okay.
The district shall provide
It's the
parents
second to
annually
the-
with an outline of the human growth and development program
Yep.
using their child's grade level as well as information regarding how a parent may inspect and complete the program instruction materials. Prior to use in the classroom, the program shall be made available to parents for inspection. The district shall notify parents in advance of instruction, and give them an opportunity for instruction. So are we okay with leaving
So
it
that,
in
I mean, that sounds
2414?
that sounds pretty broad. And it's annual. So,
What specifically are you looking
well, if something comes up a couple months into the school year, that wasn't covered in the annual.
for? We still have 9130 if there's an issue with it, but.
So like currently, for instance, having a fifth grader that just went through this, prior to that, a note is sent home. It's not at the beginning of the year, it's prior to that instructional
That-
time.
Yeah, that's my concern, is making sure that.
Because that's being done.
So annually doesn't mean at the beginning of the year, it just means once a year.
Once a year for that.
Or prior
grade
to-
level or whatever.
Prior to instruction, or prior to,
This, the human growth and development portion.
would it make more sense to change the wording? Is that what you're saying? So instead of saying annually, to say,
Well, that's a policy
That's a
that we're not
different
even
policy.
looking
Right,
at. Trish, is there anything you'd like to add?
I can assure you we're following the policy, the human growth and development policy. I checked with all of our instructors. So I think it's very well covered, how it's stated. That's a whole separate policy that very specifically follows state statute for that human growth and development. This is separate, and that's why Neola has recommended that.
Because this is just health education in general.
Correct.
clarify? Is that any different? Do you have anything to add, Dan?
I'm mulling it over.
I'm just
We'll
concerned
come
that,
back.
you know, parents aren't gonna.
Yeah, and we'll have it reviewed in a month.
Yes.
Parents are gonna get enough of a heads up on something that could be very controversial.
And then there's going on a strikes through, and I don't know if just staff recommended that, the pink, so it's further on down.
That's because it's referring to the administrative guidelines, and so that information is in the,
So, but just the listing of the topics that would be covered, is that still gonna be in this policy?
okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Like.
Are you, you're talking about 2413?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Where it says, use, abuse of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, mental, physical, dental health, all that stuff, disease prevention and control. I think all those topics should be in there.
Are you talking about this right here?
Yep.
A, specifically A?
Yep. Yep. All of them. Just so that people, when they're looking at this, know what the course is gonna cover.
Oh, don't they get that every year anyway?
I guess you're wondering, where else would this information be if it's not in here? So,
It's in the course outlines.
Okay.
I don't think it hurts to have it in here though.
Anything to protect parental rights is what I'm talking about.
Well, we're gonna have to go back to Neola then and see what would be the best way to get some recommendations on how to word this, because the part that was stricken had to do with the administrative guidelines.
Right.
So, Alicia, would you contact Ed at Neola and ask about that?
So we're reviewing the administrative portion of A through C, right, that section?
Yeah. And I guess specifically just A.
Well, it's just, or the whole thing?
The whole thing, everything that's all pink there.
Any other comments on the health education policy? All right, we'll move on, 31, so also, do we have to agree to adopt these, or we're just adding these? Or Neola's recommending that we add all of these, correct? This is
It's just the first one.
new.
We vote on it.
Yeah, I understand, but we're recommending that all of these on this list.
We
be
are
added.
recommending
Okay.
that all of these be added, yeah. We've talked with administration and
All right, 3140, non-renewal, resignation, and termination.
so we're not recommending that. I mean, we went to administration and asked, do we need this? And when we were in our committee meeting, I didn't think that we needed this because I think this is covered in the employee handbook, and Shannon reached out to Rochelle, and yes, it is explicitly written about in our employee handbook.
And Danny, you're asking for where the employee handbook is?
Yeah, I got a copy today.
Okay. Okay. So this one, we would not use
We
that?
would not need
Okay. I guess if you have any concept or sneaking that through it.
Sounds good.
Employee leave, 3431.
Same thing, it's in the employee handbook, so we would not need this one. You know, but we brought it, you know, in case someone thought we should have a policy also, but all of this is covered in our employee
I'm
handbook.
guessing 4431 is the same.
Yes,
I think I had a concern that it was gonna mess with leave that we've got over in the last
Oh, yeah.
6 months. I think.
Yeah, we don't handle it.
Is it
I'll
safer,
muddy that up.
is it safer to have it in policy as well, even though it's redundant, that it's in the employee
I
handbook?
think you'd have to reword the policy to fit what we've already done.
So you're saying that it'd be better not to take the policy because,
Well, we already have.
Since we reviewed the employee handbook.
It's already in place. Board approved in place. Is it in the handbook? I mean, you could. You could
We
create
just
a
have to
policy
align
that
those two.
would reflect it.
What do you think? You see?
I'm comfortable if it's in the employee handbook, I just
Okay.
didn't know, more or less asking if having policy kind of overrides handbook as far as it being posted and laid out.
the employee handbook would have to follow policy.
And I would say Rochelle recommended it's not necessary,
Okay.
that's the advice I would follow,
Okay.
just as our HR person, but.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, we'll keep moving then. 6611, district supported sponsored student activity accounts.
There were some selections. We talked about this one for quite a while, because it's confusing between district supported and district sponsored. It's a fine nuance of meaning. I see there's a typo in business. I wonder if I can fix it.
Probably
I
not.
did.
Where is it at?
I fixed it in mine.
Yeah. Yeah, it just.
Yeah, I just added an A to manager.
Major.
It was major, yes.
Business manager, salary, the treasurer, the student count, student activity
Oh,
count.
Most of this, for example, the established activity for the use of needy students to be dispersed at the discretion of the athletics activities director, that's what we currently do. Most of this is what we currently do.
Any other comments on that one? Okay, volunteers.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Can I pop back, I'm sorry, for health education, I need to pop out of here, and I may not be at the May 20th when you come back for second reading. Can I just go back to that administrative guidelines for just a second?
Yep.
You know, striking through the administrative guidelines, if you read those topics that are in there, you know, the board approves the health standards, you know, we align our curriculum to health standards. Each July, the first meeting in July, you will approve the alignment by state statute to the state standards. So I'm just wondering, when you see the course overviews, when you see our course overviews that have the state standards and the essential standards, that the courses are aligned to, if we need any of that, that's why that is struck through. Administrative guidelines are truly kind of the operational materials behind, and that's just something that was sitting in this policy that doesn't need to be there because we have state standards that we align our learning opportunities, our curriculum to. And then each course then picks out their essential standards that they make sure our students, based on needs assessments and such, that we do our work to, and then parents are made aware of those. So I'm not sure what you would put in policy that would say, unless you would just say Wisconsin State Health Standards, as clear as that. So just something to be aware of, because that is what state statute would be.
Questions on there, comments?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Trish.
Yeah.
Back down to 8120.
So we are recommending that we take this policy, but we have, what we currently do is all of these that are options. However, we raised a question about whether or not this included after-school activities, such as an adult volunteering in the concession stand, or an adult volunteering at the post-prom party. And Ed does not think that those are included. But he is checking on this. He's going to a meeting on Friday, and he's going to get back to us.
So we do the background checks for like field trips. and
Mhm.
such.
But currently, there's not background checks being put in place for like post-prom or after-school, like for.
Concession stands, working in the concession stand. And according to Ed, it was because those are public events.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of adults here. They might not be working in the concession stand, but they're in the,
That makes sense.
yeah.
And he also mentioned that it's not a, like, it's after required school hours too, he also.
That makes sense.
So we think we're going to end up taking all of these options.
So we would check all of them between the green section.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, right, Shannon, we do all this stuff already.
Yeah, and I think maybe, I'm gonna bring this one back to the admin team to review, just to make sure in each building, kind of a recalibration of what is everybody doing. We use our Raptor systems now, that was new this year, so just, I'll bring that one back to them tomorrow too, before the next meeting.
Thank you.
And that, the first part, the drafting note that was in green basically says if a board member were to volunteer, we follow the same guidelines as other volunteers, correct?
Right.
I'm reading that.
All right, next one, 8431, preparedness for safe hazards.
So Shannon, if you want to add, but my understanding on this one is all that stuff in yellow is taken out because we do have the administrative guidelines.
Mhm.
All right, 8700, facultating employees.
So here on the, Alicia, can you scroll down a little bit on this one?
Mhm.
Because I have an option checked on my paper that's not reflected here. And maybe we don't need to do this, but it talks about the law, says that the minimum required by law is 1 year. And so on my paper, I had checked 1 calendar year.
Oh.
But it's here saying where the sentence.
Right here?
And that to do so. But, it makes sense, I mean, we could end the sentence there, but I thought it would be better to include the 1 year because that's the state law minimum. So does anybody have a concern about that one? Or a preference?
You're saying to take out the 1 year?
No, I'm saying that we should take that option for up to 1 year. Because
Right.
that's what's the minimum required by law.
What do you think?
Oh.
So for up to 1 year, go with the other way
So
to
then
say.
if there was elected an employee beyond a year, they couldn't utilize that?
Oh, no,
Yeah, so I think that's why they stopped it short.
so, oh, that might be,
So then you would maybe still keep that strict, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just
Sorry,
leave it
Alicia.
eligible to do so.
All good. Not the little undo button can't fix.
Sorry. I was thinking that it was at least.
Mm.
And then the last one, we're using school counselors, that's one we want to
Yeah.
check, or is it all of them?
No, we checked with Shannon on that. She said school counselor.
Okay, any other questions? So we'll go to 3211, whistleblower protection. Just 32 and 4211 are the same.
Yep. And we have this policy in
1,000s?
somewhere else.
1211.
Yeah. And so these policies mirror the language in the policy that we already have.
Questions on either of those two? Okay. Thank you, Nina and Lori, for going through those ahead of time, making those notes, and people who did them ahead of time, and I know Andy reached out to Trish ahead of time and do questions. Continue to do that, so we can get your stuff answered before the meeting, so. All right, move on to review, policy review requests. Citizens advisory committees. I think you brought this one?
Yes, I wanted to just bring this up for discussion.
We don't have this policy yet, is that right?
We do not have it yet. We may have had it in the past, but we don't any longer, I'm not sure about the history.
No, we've never had
had
this
it?
policy.
Okay, so, in the strategic plan with the fourth pillar being the community pillar, 4.1 sites families being involved, and 4.2 sites community being involved. And I think it would be helpful to have citizen advisory committees to research certain topics, to present to the board what they find, with the board being so busy with other duties. I think that would be really helpful. I would like to see there being a committee for artificial intelligence and education. I think that could be really interesting, the pros and cons of that. And then also Title IX, which has huge changes to that. An original law enacted in 1972 to protect women and girls and give them more opportunities in sports, access to higher education, scholarships, and more. And that protection for females in sports and spaces by these new revisions. Redefining sex to mean gender identity can harm our girls in their spaces, in their bathrooms, and in sports. Many states are refusing to comply. As our own entity, Somerset School District can choose how we move forward, and community involvement is crucial in this.
Did we talk about this one in the past, Lori? I thought we looked at this.
We may have, we have two advisory committees at this time. One of them has to do with policy 8510 wellness, and the state law specifically says that you need to have a community group. The other one is policy 2414, human growth and development, and again, the state law specifically requires that we have an community advisory group. And if you look at this policy 9140 that we're looking at right now, it says in there that, you know, even if we did enact this as an active current policy, every time you create an advisory committee, you have to set the specific parameters around it. So in the past, we just did not feel that we needed this policy, because every time you enact an advisory committee, you have to set up the specific, let's see, you know, the things that it says in here that you have to have the specific topic for study. It has to be assigned in writing. The committee, no advisory committee shall be permitted to continue for prolonged periods without a definite assignment. The structure and the organization of the advisory committee shall be determined by the board as appropriate to the assignment. So we just always felt that when we meet an advisory committee, we would address those particular points rather than just have a broad, general advisory committee policy.
But Danny, are you talking about more specific?
Yep.
Depending on the subject matter,
Yep.
topic, I agree with you that, especially now, today's day and age, that it'd be great to have parental involvement, and I think statute says, what, up to 5 or 5 parents can be involved in these committees?
I don't know if
If
it
it
says
says
that, just
specific-
that that's the greater portion
Right.
of the committee makeup.
Right, yeah, that's the majority, or
Yep.
majority. But with student business, other safety issues too, besides SRO, like pick up and drop off for the students, elementary school, and, various safety items. There's a lot that can be done, and get some community / parent input, I think would be helpful if it's specific to a certain time frame or subject. It's got a definite beginning and end as far as the time that the committee would be open. I think it's a great idea.
So if we put this policy in place, we would still, advisory committee would then come to the board for us to approve if we want to proceed with that committee. So is this similar to the committees that we had prior to having work sessions? So we used to have,
No, would be similar to, for example, when we were investigating whether or not going to referendum. And we had a community group who met multiple times.
Yeah.
And then they brought a recommendation to the
oh,
board.
I don't see a huge problem. I think we're putting the cart way before the horse. The discussion is, do we want Neil to present this to the policy committee? We can look at it.
Currently, 25% of Neola's clients take this policy.
Right, we can be different.
And I'd like to hear the feedback of why is it only 25%? What's the burden on the district? But we're covered with the critical topics. I feel like we can put an advisory committee together. So, yeah, this is nice to look at and see what does this actually look like if we adopted it? Because it seems like a whole lot of work, and I don't know what we're trying to accomplish yet. If we had an issue, we can put an advisory committee together as we stand today, correct?
Just because we have this policy doesn't mean that we have any advisory committees.
Right, but let's say there was a health issue. The way our policy stands today, we could put a group of citizens together. We're able to do that. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have it in the books on the record that if we need it.
It's a tool.
But I guess I'm kind of confused then how it would go to Neola, because I get what you're saying to have it in writing, but some of the topics that were brought up, then with those topics really wouldn't be put into this.
No,
Nothing
no,
happens
those are
with
just
this
areas of
policy.
study.
Okay.
Unless the majority of the board was going to create an advisory committee to look at something.
so we can't already do this, like we did with the referendum, I guess. So we do this already, maybe? Or have we done it already?
Yeah.
We just don't have a policy.
Right.
That would be interesting. I mean, what Neola is like, what Matt said, like, what's the positive, what's the negatives, what's the reason for
I guess they're not
having
recommending.
it or not?
Haven't recommended us
What
adding a
Neola,
flag or whatnot.
what Neola's feedback is.
My understanding is just that it was not seen as necessary by a majority of the boards. Would you agree?
Limited info that he shared, that's what he stated. But we can certainly reach back out and get
Yeah,
some more detailed information.
I guess maybe, you could do that, Shannon. We could
Yep.
Yeah, if we're already doing some of this, we can put committees together.
I think it's more how they're put together.
How they're put together? Okay.
And the rules that govern them. So,
Oh, yeah, chair public person shall be committee, children, members.
Okay.
Okay. So you'll reach back out to me all for us, is that all right, Danny?
Yep. Okay, can I ask one more quick question now that that clarified a little bit when you said it's more house? So does that mean like going back to the group that we had for the referendum? So there was like 40 people that met, we were on that. That's saying that anytime there's like a group like that, it would have to be approved by the board? All appointments of citizen, okay.
So basically, they're analyzing, giving recommendations. We're not bound by those, but take the input.
Okay, any other questions on that policy? Okay, so the next one is board member information requests. So I requested this one get added. Just as, you know, we had new board members on, and this seems to kind of happen every time we have new board members. There's a lot of emails that fly around back and forth, a lot of requests that get made, a lot of, you know, we even got into the blind copy, all this information that happens, it goes back and forth. And I think my reason for bringing it up was a lot of the discussions we want to have and the information, asking for information from, you know, staff or administration, whatever is fine, but you know, remember the discussion of that item needs to come here at this meeting. Like we want to have that here, we won't want to fly around emails back and forth, you know, getting in the weeds or details on, you know, specific information requests. If you have a request and it's second and we get it on the agenda, that's fine. And then, you know, there isn't a bunch of back and forth. Let's just get that information out, and then we can discuss it here as a group, and then move forward and make the recommendations that we want. And then the other one is just, you know, I'll even just say the amount of requests that we are asking of our administrators or teachers or staff or anybody when we're reaching out is, you know, being realistic with what we're asking, how much we're asking, when we're doing it, and even bringing up, you know, like we've talked of, you know, if there's questions on policy, you know, of course, bring it up before that meeting starts so we can review it. Then during the meeting, you have your answers, so we're not kind of blindsiding, but those are the questions that I guess I always like to ask instead of maybe making additional requests that might burden or, you know, I think the last line in here, the board may impose limitations, volume, scope, timing of information requests, other than public record requests. Just, I guess I'm just asking that if we have requests, you know, we, you know, kind of prioritize these things as we're moving, so we're not overwhelming our staff and people with doing more than, you know, also doing their job they do all day. I'm not trying to silence you, really,
So if I can, I would like some direction from the board as a whole, just to help me kind of navigate through the requests and those kinds of things of, you know, outside of this room, you know, board members essentially are private citizens, right, and have access, of course, to any public records request information that any citizen would have. So when I get those types of requests, I would like some guidance on, as a board, are those things that you would like me to prioritize and expedite? Are those things that I should navigate as a typical open records request, which sometimes can take weeks or a month, depending on kind of what's happening in my world? You know, what would you prefer in terms of how I'm using my time to navigate those requests? So it's not about not giving you the information. I would just like some guidance from the board in terms of how you want me to go about using my time when those requests come. Not hiding anything, happy to give you whatever you're asking for, but with the volume of requests that have occurred in the last couple weeks, I need that just to help me kind of navigate how I do my job. And certainly part of my job is giving you information as board members, but I would like a clear directive leaving here tonight from the whole board of how you would like me to navigate that. That will help me kind of figure out moving forward how you best want me using my time.
I would think it would be a priority that board would receive on a timeline basis to get the information that's requested, so we can be prepared for our sessions.
I'll say, I think if it's tied to a direct agenda item, it should be a priority, because that speaks for the board as a whole. If it's not tied to a specific, then it should be a regular citizen request. That, again, I think that we're a unified voice, whether we agree or disagree. The decision we make here and what we do in the next 2 weeks, our representation of this board. So we're all welcome to request extra things outside, but if it's tied to if it's not tied to the agenda, then I think it should be on anyone else.
I do think that the requests that were made were tied to this agenda though in the last couple of weeks. Maybe I'm wrong. But from what I saw, those requests for information were tied to this week.
Well, I think sometimes it goes back to like looking at, like what you were saying, according to the agenda, what is it tied to? Like, is it productive for everybody, and what's the reason for requesting it? I'll give an example of all the request for Dr. Pritzel's information, because I don't think that was tied to all the specific pieces. You know, I want to make sure that wasn't really a board piece, in my opinion. When we're talking about respecting taxpayers' money and looking at our community, I think we need to do that in the same way with our administration, because a lot of these requests are taking time. And by any means, yes, we can get answers to things. I've requested things as well, but we're also paying our staff to do their job, not to be our personal secretaries to get information.
I think the policy kind of spells it out, doesn't it? When a board member would like the administration to compile information which will require lengthy research and investigation, the request should be submitted to the district administrator, who will distribute copies to the board. And then the request will be reviewed at the next meeting, if possible, to clarify the request and determine the context of other priorities.
What, can you just identify what section that is?
It's letter B.
B? Well, I guess there's your answer. It's in policy.
So then that information that's requested before goes to all of that, comes back to the whole board.
Correct.
It's specified what, now that I remember reading it, what that is, the difference between like a public or kind of a question versus what that's addressing.
So, is there a definition on lengthy research and investigation? I mean, I guess that would be
That would be opinion.
up to the administrator's opinion.
Uh-huh.
But there's more definition, isn't it? I read it like a week ago.
And that specific policy?
I thought so. I'm going blind reading policy right now.
Well, C talks a little bit more about statistics and reports. Is that what you're thinking?
That are readily available.
Yes, and I think A is. Yeah, I think bring up the
Substantial investment.
the general public will be presented to the board for you. So it kind of spells out what information we're talking
Does that help, Shannon?
Well, I'm familiar with the policy. I would say kind of.
I guess if we want additional items on the agenda, we know how that process works. If we want additional information to support those items, you know, I guess that's what maybe I kind of hear that we're making, that if we do want that we do prioritize, but other requests that aren't tied to agenda items will get responded to us in the same time as it would be anybody else.
Well, I guess I'll back up a little bit because, I mean, even if it is an agenda item, if there's substantial time, it comes back to the next meeting, and that's what's very clear right here. So even if it's on the agenda, no, that's not necessarily the directive.
Or you're saying, but we would have a report out at the next.
Or at least a report out of what the request is.
Yeah.
And then the board would decide, yeah, prioritize this or not, right? That's how I interpret this.
And it would be an entire board decision.
I think that's what I'm getting at, is individual versus the entire board giving me direction on what you want me spending my time on. Because the reality is, whatever these requests are, that are kind of loosely outlined in this policy, like, the reality is, I may not get to it same day, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. That's just how it's gonna work. And not because I don't want to, not because I'm not trying to give information, that's the reality of my day at times, right? And so the direction will be helpful just so I can help prioritize and determine how to navigate through those requests and the information. Because of course, as board members, I want you to have information, I want you to be prepared, I want you to have answers to your questions, absolutely. But I also think a recognition of it may not always happen immediately. So.
What timeline do you think is reasonable if it's an agenda item?
Depends on the item, I think.
Yeah.
And the request.
I mean, if you're just asking a question
You know, like
about budget or something, that'd be easily answered.
I mean, I could think it's like, so Dave, he said, Dave, give us the percentage, what's it gonna cost to give everyone X percent? Well, that takes a long time for him to work through every single employee. To me, that's not something we're gonna get back immediately. That takes a substantial amount of time. I mean, we can throw those requests out there. Maybe he can give us a follow-up. Yes, I'll follow up in 2 weeks or at this meeting.
Well, that would be helpful too, just having, when we get a reply, yeah, probably be 2 days or something like that, just based on, what we're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, I just
We
think.
don't want to be reasonable.
Right, and I think of if I have to research anything, if I can hit quick respond because I know right off the top of my head, yeah, that's one thing. But if I have to research anything, that you try to find that hour to work through is pretty substantial. I think anybody's day. I mean, my thought is if you can't respond to sit down and write your couple-minute email, I think that would be something that has to come back to the full board, but.
Yes, I don't feel comfortable agreeing to putting any time limit on it because we never know what could come up. I think we all have to just understand and agree as a group of adults here that we all hear each other's questions and we will all do our best to respond. And outside of that, I think it's unreasonable to say there's got to be a response in X number of days.
No, I think the opportunity is there to provide a response.
Absolutely.
In a certain amount of time, we'll get to it next week. Or if it's
That
really
seems
bad, it's gonna be a
beyond
lot. If it's something that you're not comfortable with, then it should go back to the board.
And that's in 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it's.
But you want a little less than that if it's, we're talking 2 weeks between meetings, right? Then, so that we can analyze the information we receive and be prepared.
Yeah, but I would say if there's any analyzing happening, then I think we all should be aware of what the request is. We all should be getting that same information. So if there's analyzing, then we should be agreeing like, yep, let's get this information.
The 2-week meetings aren't a finish line either. But we've kicked issues down 3 or 4 meetings when I've had an issue and everybody's very patient and I appreciate it. While I work through what I'm trying to figure out. So I don't think I'm.
But the other thing is about coming to this next meeting, that just means that the request comes to the next meeting and the board decides. It's not like you're gonna get the answer guaranteed at the next meeting.
Right, and, you know, we have this, and that's kind of, we're on this cadence of, we have that work session, we can get some things on, we can discuss it here and give maybe that direction that's needed, and then we also have the next 2 weeks usually between the work session and when we're gonna make a decision, and that's why we try to come up with this cadence, so we can do a little back and forth if needed. And the board has given direction of some sort, you know, at the meeting tonight, we're gonna have a closed session next meeting to discuss, you know, I think that's what we should be doing here. So I guess getting the items maybe on the agenda, maybe a little background of what information you're looking for, so hopefully it can be there, but otherwise, if there is any further than that, it needs to be a board discussion at the next meeting.
It's
And
kind of
if-
exactly what happened with the SRO discussion.
Yeah, and if we need more discussion, yeah, we can.
So what's that?
Yeah, let's have it here. And I guess that's where, you know, that's where it kind of came out like, let's try to discuss it here. Do as best we can, you know, to get it on, but then let's discuss it here and then give direction to whatever group we want to give direction to.
And I think Shannon, you sent out an email about open meeting laws. I mean, when you start having all kinds of emails flying around, you have the potential for violations of open meeting laws.
And I would say that I think that happens every time we get new board members on. And we always seem to have that, when we start copying people just because it's trying to keep everyone moving. Hold on, you can't, just because you're blind copy, that doesn't mean it's absolved everybody from, that still sees it, so.
Well, and if we want to keep saying we want to be transparent to our community, I think that it should be discussed in an open session, not via email.
All right.
Well, does that help?
So I-
Yep, I would
So
say
then,
that's
yeah,
more helpful.
items go on the agenda. If we can get background before the meeting, otherwise they come here and we discuss them and then give direction of the information and research we're looking for our administration. I'm trying to put words in people's mouth, does that sum it up?
Mhm.
Give direction, Steve, is that? Anybody else? Okay, thanks for going through that one, everybody. And then moving on, item 11, consent agenda. Does anybody want to make?
I will make a motion to approve consent agenda 11, items A1, B1.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. For that item. Next one, general information. The next regular session will be May 20th. We will have a listening session 30 minutes prior. Please sign up for that one if possible. 2 people, so you've sent out that to everybody, right? A link for that listening session, okay? And then we'll have a closed session after that meeting as well. District celebrations, Danny, start with you.
Let's see, career day last Friday? Turned out really amazing. My kids really loved it, and it looked like there was a ton of involvement from lots of different people and industries, which is really cool. Thank you, everybody.
Looking forward to the Wax Museum at the elementary school, 3rd grade. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. It's always a fun day to go in there. And then just best of luck to all the staff that are out there that are listening as we kind of near the finish line. It's nice to see us move back into school one day, and there's a lot of work to happen between now and then. So we're here to support you, and we're almost there.
Just to the district parents for their input during the election and moving forward for input and hopefully advisory committee.
Ian?
I guess I'll kind of parrot what Matt said, and thank all of our teachers on Teacher Appreciation Week.
There you go, you got it.
Take my item.
Oh, I had that too.
Anything else, Ian? Lori?
That was it.
I also thank you, teachers, Teacher Appreciation Week. Also really cool Fox 9 Top Teacher Award to Dawn Pierre. And I loved the way our community came and celebrated that and posted. I thought it was also very fitting that she had just presented at our meeting the last time too. So I think has that ever happened to Somerset?
One other time.
Yeah.
Okay.
That I'm aware of.
So that was pretty cool. I know my kids were really excited. We watched it on the news, it came up, and that was neat. So congratulations to Dawn, and yeah.
Okay, yeah, those are the items I had. So, I think that's it. Okay, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Steve, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned at 7:47.